Hi everybody, and welcome to my fourth tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be learning data types in Python. So let's get started. So first of all, data types are values in Python. It's very important that you know these values because if you don't know these values, you'll have a very hard time when you are coding big stuff in Python or in any other language. Okay, so first of all, inside the a variable, I'll put in a whole number that can be positive or negative. So I'll just say 56. So run the code. And it will display the number 56. Okay, so now, by the terminal displaying the number 56, how can I know what data type does this number 56 belong to? So you might be thinking, what does it matter what data type it belongs to? It's a number. Well, the answer is, when you do math, let's say, the number has to be a specific value. And if the number is not that specific value, it will give you an error. So now, to fix this error, Python has a function that can tell me what data type does a number belong to. So for that, between the parentheses of the print function, I'll use the type function, and then parentheses. And now, between the parentheses, I put in my whole number, or I put in the name of the variable. When I run the code, instead of displaying the number 56, it displays this class int. So basically, now in the terminal, it told me what class, what value this number 56 belongs to. So this number 56 belongs to the int or integer data type in Python. Okay, so now what is an integer? An integer is a whole number that can be positive or negative. So now let's learn our second data type in Python. To this number 56, I'll add a decimal point and decimal places. I'll run the code, and it will display class float. And that means that this number 56.56 belongs to the float class in Python. Okay, so now what is a float? Float is a number with a decimal point. You might have get a little bit confused, and because now I'll put in the number 1 inside the a variable, and I'll run the code. I'll display class integer. When I add a decimal point to it, and I run the code, it will display class float. So how can that be? So the answer is, for us, 1 and 1.0 is equal. Well, for the computer, however Python uses floats and integers, it works completely different. So now let's learn our third data type in Python. Inside the a variable, we'll put in a pair of quotes. It can be single quotes or double quotes. It doesn't matter. And between the quotes, we'll put in some text. It's very important you have quotes around the text, and if you don't have quotes around the text, you will get an error. And now run the code, and it will display class string. String is basically text that's placed between quotes. Okay, so now let's learn our last data type in Python. So now, inside the a variable, I'll put in either true or false. And it's very important that the first letter is capitalized. So here, if you see for true, the T is capitalized and the F is capitalized for false. And if you don't have the T capitalized, you will get an error. And now run the code, and it will display class bool. And that means that this true here belongs to the Boolean class in Python. Okay, so now what is a Boolean? A Boolean is either true or false. And numbers can also be Booleans. So at the end of this tutorial, I'll show you how can you use 1 or 0 as Booleans. So now I'll show you an example why it's very important you know data types and how to use them. Inside the a variable, I'll put in quotes, and that means I'm going to be typing in text here. The text will be the random number is colon space, and then plus, and then I put in a random number. I'll say 57, and I'll remove the type function because I don't need it. And I'll run the code, and it'll give me a type error. And that's because you can't display strings and then integers together unless you do something. So now I'll show you how you solve this problem. So to solve this problem, I'll erase the number 57 for now, and I'll type in str, that stands for string, parentheses, and between the parentheses, I'll put in the number I want to display. I run the code, and the error is solved. So basically what I did here is by wrapping this number 57 with a string method, I basically told Python to take this number 57 out of the integer class and put it inside the string class. And in Python, a number can also be a string, because if I put my number between the quotes, it won't be an integer, it would be a string. Basically what I did is I'm displaying strings and then more strings. So that solved my error. So now I'll show you how can you use 1 and 0 as booleans. So first, inside the a variable, I'll type in bool for boolean, and between the parentheses, I'll put in either 1 or 0. So I just decided to put in 0, and remember that 1 will display true and 0 will display false. Now when I run the code, it will display false, and that's because 0 is false. So you could play around with data types. Like, I'll give you an example. So let's say instead of bool, I'll put in float, and then when I run the code, it add a decimal point to the number 1. So basically converted the integer into a float. And you could do the same thing the opposite. You add to the 1 a decimal point, and then instead of float, you put an int for integer, and you run the code. It will display 1, and it removes the decimal point, and that's because a integer is a whole number without decimal points. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this tutorial, so thanks for watching.